Hello, how are you? How are you all doing? In this video, I'm going to talk to you about one of my favorite theorems. Today, I'm going to explain everything about the exterior angle theorem. Let's get started. This is one of those shortcuts that once you master it, will make your life much easier when solving geometry problems. And the theorem says, the measure of an exterior angle of a triangle is equal to the sum of the measures of the two interior angles that are not adjacent to it. Yes, I know this might seem a little confusing, so look, let me explain it to you in detail with a graphic. Look, here we have a triangle whose interior angles are A and B. And here we have an exterior angle represented by the letter D. According to what the theorem says, the measure of this exterior angle should be equal to the sum of the measures of these two interior angles. Since it's saying that we have to add the two interior angles that are not adjacent to this exterior angle. For that reason, this angle has to measure the same as the sum of these two angles. Let's write that down then. We write that the measure of angle D has to be equal to the measure of angle A plus the measure of angle B. This is what the theorem says. As you can see, it's pretty simple, right? If I had, for example, an angle over here, let me extend it, which I would call E, then what would have to happen? Well, the measure of angle E has to be equal to what? Well, to the sum. The measures of the two interior angles that are not adjacent to E, in this case. That is, it would have to be the measure of angle B plus the measure of angle C. Are you following me with that? Perfect. We could also do it here, for example, but I think that's already understood. So let's see. What I'm going to do next is a short proof. Not very formal, but so you can understand why this has to be the case. That I have over here, which is basically the same thing. Look, the first thing we're going to do is the following. I want you to notice that between angle C and angle D, they form a straight angle, that is, an angle of 180 degrees. Or in other words, these two angles are supplementary, right? So, we can go ahead and write that the measure of angle C plus the measure of angle D has to be how much? Well, 180 degrees. Right? Again, why? Because together they form a straight angle, right? Now, once we have this, let's forget about it for a moment and let's go to our triangle. I want you to notice that if we add the measure of angle A plus the measure of angle B and plus the measure of angle C, what should that give me? Very good. It should give me 180 degrees. So let's write that down. There, we have it here. Look, the measure of angle A plus the measure of angle B plus the measure of angle C should give me 180 degrees. Now, since 180 degrees is equal to 180 degrees, that means this part is equal to this part, right? So I'm going to set the left sides of the two equations equal to each other. That is, I'm going to set this equal to all of this over here. Let's write it down quickly then. The measure of angle C plus the measure of angle D has to be equal to what? Well, to everything I have over here, which is the measure of angle A plus the measure of angle B plus the measure of angle C. Let's see. I missed something here. Measure of angle C done. Now what's important here is what we're going to do. Look, since we have this value on this side and we also have it on the other side, I could subtract the measure of angle C from both sides of the equation. Or in other words, I could say that I move this over by subtracting, right? Like this. So this cancels out with this. And what am I left with? Well, I'm left with the measure of angle D has to be equal to the measure of angle A plus the measure of angle B. And as you can see, we're arriving at exactly the same equation we had over here, which is exactly what the theorem was talking about. Easy, right? Exercise number 1. We have to determine the measure of the angle we have here, represented by the letter X. What should we do? Well, let's say that the measure of angle X has to be equal to the sum of which angles? Well, this angle and this other angle I have over here, right? So I end up with 70 degrees plus 50 degrees. And this gives me a total of 120 degrees done. That's it. It's that simple. So the measure of this angle is 120 degrees. You understand why, right? By adding these two angles, which are interior and not adjacent to x, let's make it a bit more complicated. Exercise number 2. In this case, I want you to notice that they are already giving us the measure of this exterior angle, and they're only giving us the measure of one of the interior angles. So once again, we're going to set up exactly the same thing, except now we'll have to solve for the unknown, because now we have to calculate the measure of this interior angle, which is also not adjacent to this exterior angle, right? So what do we have left? Well, let's say that 80, which would be this value, is equal to the sum of these two, right? That is 30 plus x. Well, I'm going to write degrees here and here. Okay, we can move this 30 to the other side by subtracting, right? So that leaves me with 80 degrees minus 30 degrees. This is what x equals. And well, 80 minus 30 is equal to 50, so this interior angle measures 50 degrees. Done. We're finished. Let's make it more complicated. In this case, it does get more complicated because, as you can see, we already have unknowns. So the first thing we have to do is figure out how much x is worth. But for this, we're going to have to set up an equation. And how are we going to set it up? Well, with the same theorem. Again, what do we have to do? Well, here I want you to notice that this angle is in degrees, okay? That's why I represented it this way. And also, here this angle has this measurement, which is in degrees. So, what should I do? Well, I should state that this exterior angle has to be equal to the sum of these two interior angles. So I get 12x plus 5, which has to be equal to 2 times the quantity, x plus 30, and to this we're going to add 45. Now we're going to have to solve this equation. We're going to use degrees, and at the end, we'll put degrees on the answers, okay? All right. So on the left side, I'm going to leave it as it is for now, which is 12x plus 5. And over here, we're going to multiply. 2 times x is 2x. And here we have plus 2 times 30, which is 60. And here we have a 45. Let me move everything with x to the left side. So I have 12x, and we're going to move this 2x by subtracting it. On the right side, we have 60 plus 45. So I'll write it for now, and then we'll add them up later. And we're going to move this plus 5 by subtracting it. That is, as minus 5, let's do the subtraction. 12x minus 2x leaves me with 10x. And here we have 60 plus 45, which equals 105. Minus 5 gives us 100. And from here, we can solve for it, right? This 10, since it's multiplying, we can move it to the other side dividing. Right away, 100 divided by 10 gives me 10 done. So now we have that x equals 10. That's the value that makes the equation true. Therefore, if I want to find out how big these angles are, which we don't know, then we're going to substitute 10 for x, right? So let me put it over here. I'll start with this angle first. So I have 12 times whatever x is, which is 10, and then plus 5. See, I'm substituting here. So then this would be equal to 12 times 10, which is 120. Plus 5 equals 125. Now, these are degrees. So we have that this angle measures 125 degrees. All right, we're done. Now let's move on to the other angle. So let's write 2 times x. But we said that x is equal to 10 plus 30. We do the operations, and I get 2 times 10 plus 30, which is 40. Finally, 2 times 40 is 80. And now we add degrees. Done. So now we have that this angle is 80 degrees. It looked a bit messy, but there it is. 80 degrees done. Let's do the last exercise, and I'll leave you one for homework. Look. Before moving on to the next exercise, I want you to notice that we're sure we did it right for the following reason. Because if we add 45 plus 80, which are these two angles, the interior ones that are not adjacent to this exterior angle, well, if we add them, we get 125. And that has to give me the same as this one over here, right? So that means I did it correctly, because here we also got 125. So that means everything is correct. Well, now let's move on to the last exercise. In this last exercise, we have to determine the value of x, and we also have to determine the measure of each of the angles that are marked here. As you can see, in this case we have the exterior angle marked here. Well, one of the exterior angles, which says it measures 10x plus 10 degrees. And over here we have these two angles that are interior and that are not adjacent to this one over here, right? In this case, here we also have the measurements, but in terms of x. So again, what will we have to do? Well, we set them equal. What this measures will be equal to what this one measures, plus what this other one measures, right? According to the theorem. So, let's write that. 10x plus 10 has to be equal to 8x minus 18 plus this one, which is 5x minus 20. Let's solve for x here. I'll leave this 10x on this side, we'll move this 8x over by subtracting it, and we'll also move this 5x over by subtracting it. On the right side, I have this minus 18. I also have this minus 20 and this plus 10. We'll move it over as a minus 10. Let's do the operations. 10x minus 8x is 2x, and 2x minus 5x gives me negative 3x. On the right side, we have minus 18 minus 20, which is minus 38, and minus 38 minus 10 equals minus 48. We're going to divide by this minus 3, so we have minus 48 divided by minus 3. But a negative divided by a negative gives a positive, right? Let's see quickly. Let's do the division here. 3 divides into 4 once with 1 left. Bring down the 8. 3 divides into 18 6 times. 6 times 3 is 18. Subtract and get 0. So now we already have the value of x. Now let's start finding the measure of each angle. Let's see. This one is easy to do, right? Because x is equal to 16. So I have 10 times 16 is 160, and 160 plus 10 is 170. So this one is simple. We already have that. This angle x measures 170 degrees. Let's go with this other one I have over here. It's not that simple anymore, so I'm going to do it over here. It's 8 times whatever x is, which is 16. And from this, we're going to subtract 18. Let's see. 8 times 6 is 48. Carry the 4, 8 times 1 is 8, and the 4 I carried makes 12. I'm left with 128 minus 18, and that's equal to 110, right? In this case then, this angle measures 110 degrees. Let's try this one. It's simple too, right? Let's see. I would have 5 times x. So 5 times 16, which is equal to 80, and 80 minus 20 is 60, right? So this angle measures 60 degrees. This one plus this one has to add up to this one over here. Let's see if that's true. 110 plus 60 is equal to 170, which does work out. So what we did was correct. And well, before I say goodbye, let me give you the homework exercise. For homework, you're going to solve this exercise. You have to determine the measure of this angle here, which is represented by the letter x. When you have the answer, put it down here in the comments. I'll be giving a nice big heart to everyone who gets it right. And well, that's all for today. I hope the video was helpful, but most of all, I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked it, please subscribe to this channel. I upload videos every day. See you next time. Take care and behave yourselves. Bye-bye.